Now that we have discussed why we should study talk and interaction using conversation analysis, let's talk about how to do conversation analysis. In this two-part lecture, you will learn why interactional data are ideal for the study of social phenomena. You will identify and summarize key arguments for the orderliness of human interaction and list the steps in data collection and analysis within the CA framework. You will learn about the advantages and disadvantages of both collections of data and single case analyses used for CA. Let's start with the underlying principles of conversation analysis. CA is a fundamentally ethnomethodological approach to the study of human interaction. Ethnomethodology is a method of social and interactional analysis that examines people's own ways of constructing social action. In other words, ethnomethodological researchers examine interactions to see how people themselves, the participants in the interaction, make sense of the world and their place in it. Unless the participants make some kind of category or idea relevant through talk and action, ethnomethodological scholars do not claim that it is relevant. Since talk is the primary means of accomplishing social action, using CA helps us learn what exactly people do and say to make sense of the world and their place in it through the mundane, everyday interactions with others. For example, CA has been used to study how scientists work together to discover new knowledge and formulate ideas, how lawyers prepare witnesses for testimony, how teachers organize and adjust learning opportunities in the classroom, how doctors inform patients of diagnoses and treatments, or how groups of children build up group dynamics. To conduct a thorough CA study, we first need audio or video recorded interactions between human beings in a specific setting. Conversation analysts prefer naturally occurring data. A conversation between an actual nurse and an actual patient during the patient's actual normal visit to the doctor's office, for example, or an actual real business meeting, an actual dinner conversation in a family, and so on. However, some successful studies have also been done with elicited data, when conversations, such as problem solutions, focus groups, and so on, were set up in laboratory environments. Some interesting studies have also been conducted on scripted dialogue, such as film or TV shows. The recorded interactions, which constitute the data, are then transcribed in extremely minute detail. While such transcription is rarely phonetic, it must reflect the pronunciations of individual words, the intonation of every turn and utterance, the silences between utterances measured to 1/10 of a second, overlaps to a sound, and so on. Either collections of data or single cases can be analyzed in CA. We will talk about the specifics of each in the next part of this lecture. The goal of every CA endeavor or project is to find orderliness in discourse. We know that the discourse is orderly, and all participants in it abide by the subconscious rules of how it should go. This was clearly demonstrated in Harold Garfinkel's breaching experiments, of which you learned last week. The goal of CA is to find out what the participants do, without knowing that they do it, to achieve this order. Specifically, conversation analysts look at how people manage turn-taking, interruptions, accidental overlaps, how they accomplish such actions as advice, invitations, establishing rapport, teasing, telling jokes, and so on. CA involves sequential analysis. The key question in analyzing sequences of interaction is to ask, why that now? We will return to this question in a minute. One of the most important things to know about CA is that it is an empirical method. We do not approach any CA study with an a priori hypothesis. We do not begin our work by saying, I hypothesize that gender plays a significant role in workplace interactions, or ask, how do people make gender relevant in workplace interactions? This latter question implies we assume they do. In CA, we assume nothing. Rather, we collect data and carefully observe what is happening and draw conclusions from our observations. In other words, CA is an EDIC approach. We first describe facts and construct theories later. We do not start out with a theory and then look for facts to either confirm or falsify it. And to reiterate, the driving principle of CA is ethnomethodology. We want to know what the participants do to achieve interactional goals and how they achieve intersubjectivity, that is, a shared understanding between two minds. So what can we study using CA and what can't we? Well, first of all, we obviously study conversation, both formal and informal. So we can examine how precisely the interlocutors construct meaning in these conversations. We can also study what kind of orientations they display. For example, in a conversation between a female boss and a male employee, we can see if either participant orients to the gender of the other or their own. Only if we find that they do can we look at how it is done. We cannot a priori decide that their genders obviously matter to them, not until they display that they do through their talk. We can also study how they jointly achieve whatever goal it is that they have in interaction. But the content or the topic of the talk per se is not usually addressed in CA. We cannot say, well, the participants are talking about shoes, so therefore they're displaying their femininity in their talk, since women always talk about shoes. That would be acting on an unwarranted, unscientific stereotype. We also cannot claim anything about the participants' thoughts, feelings, or beliefs. We can only talk about their displays of thoughts, feelings, and beliefs. From my perspective, personally, this is probably the hardest thing to learn in CA, not to read between the lines and into the participants' motives or unexpressed thoughts. Now, let's return to the crucial question in CA. This question will drive all your analyses. Why that now? Let's begin with an observable fact. Human interaction unfolds in real time and in the real world. Therefore, everything we say occurs in a specific context. The place, the time, the role of the participants, the background knowledge and beliefs they may or may not hold, their understanding of the cultural specifics of each event, and so on. And each utterance is both context-dependent and context-generating. Everything we say depends on what has been said before, where, by whom, to whom, and why. But every utterance also requires a follow-up or response of a particular kind. Every interactional action, therefore, is a situated action, an action that is relevant in particular circumstances, in particular sequential orders, and with particular participants. No action, however, is deterministic, but every action does generate a circumscribed set of options. An invitation, for example, can be followed by an acceptance, a rejection, a postponement of a response, such as, let me check my calendar, or a pre-response, an exploration of what the invitation really involves. So when we study conversational sequences, we need to ask ourselves, why did this participant choose to say this thing in this way at this moment in the interaction? In other words, why this now? What were they trying to accomplish by saying it just that way and just then? Answering these questions will allow us to uncover the principles by which participants organize their talk and their actions. In the next section of the lecture, we will delve into the nitty-gritty details of data collection and data types.